Hi, this is Mark Sobowitz. Welcome. We have a great show for you today, and this is a Clarion Voice. Hi there, this is Mark Sobowitz with the Clarion Voice, and we are so pleased to have for a second time our friend Patrick Erlandson from Father Con in Southern California. Patrick, welcome again to a Clarion Voice.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. I was dying to talk to you again.
All right, very good. Well, let's dive into it. You were recently up here in Atascadero, and you gave a talk at a conference that Freedom Calling, the local North County representative, had. So I wonder what the results were of that conference, and how do you think things went?
It was really good. I think the response was powerful to both to my talk and also the district attorney was there from San Luis Obispo.
I see.
I think it was. I mean, the purpose of it was really to how to engage men in this, and I think from the response that I heard and from the continued response of messages that I've been receiving from the men who attended, it really hit a nerve. And I think there definitely was an interest in how to follow up on that and really deepen the understanding and deepen what men can actually do in fighting human trafficking.
What kind of response did that lead to? I mean, wanting to volunteer or to be a communicator of your message here in the local area?
I think both. I think they asked me to come back. They want me to kind of do, because this was really an introduction. It was like about a 45-minute presentation on the work that I've done and also on the necessity for men to engage with human trafficking and why that's so important. And so then we want to get into it much deeper. But I think for me, it's like it starts with our taking responsibility as men and especially as fathers to really to prevent any intersection that we may have with trafficking, but also in the protection of our sons and our daughters. So that's what I hope that I kind of inspired in the men that were there, was that we all have intersecting it with it one way or another, in how we're caring for our children and the kind of examples of love that we're modeling to our children.
I'm curious, you mentioned our district attorney, Dan Dow, was a speaker. What was he able to speak on? Because I know he's limited as far as, legalities and things like that. But what was his part in the conference?
Well, he spoke after me, and he shared just a little bit from a law enforcement perspective and from a judicial perspective, which is my whole perspective is on prevention. So I want to head things off, like prevent anybody from reaching his domain. But he shared about cases, that have come up and how prevalent it is, even in small towns, even in smaller cities, smaller counties, that there are numerous cases of trafficking happening. And I think that's a message that really needs to get through to people, because it's so often we have this over there concept that trafficking is something that happens to other people, or other people that are brought into our communities, which it just isn't. I mean, the data for America is that it's domestic children. It's children coming from our homes that are being preyed upon and being exploited.
What areas are you going to follow up on with the people that attended the conference? Are there things that are being put in place through Freedom Calling or through other organizations here, as far as the getting the message out about the prevention of human trafficking?
Yeah, well, so they asked me to come back and do that deeper dive, and so that's planned for either June or July.
Oh, okay, very good.
On the corner, but I think men respond differently, and they want to do something. So that's why when I was heading Men Standing Against Trafficking, so we took an area where girls were actually being trafficked, where there were hotels that were being used for trafficking. And we would go once a month and stand on the corner, and I mean it's dipping your toes in. It's giving men a chance to kind of begin to take some action and take some responsibility for what's happening. It's a fairly small ask, but it's significant. It's sending a message to the girls, which I think is so important. And the survivors that I've talked to, in their mind, every single man is a potential customer. And that's
Right.
how they see it. And it doesn't matter if you're law enforcement, a judge, a priest, a pastor. I mean, every single man is, in their minds, is a potential customer. And that's something that has to be broken, and it has to be broken by men. We have to be the ones who stand up and say,
Is
no.
is the message something that resonated more so after the conference? Because I have a feeling that there might have been some men there that heard what you and Attorney Dow had to say, and they were surprised, I'm assuming.
There were people that were really, really shocked. And sadly, there were people who were kind of depressed. I mean, they felt like, how do we fight this?
Right.
And that's something that I never want to leave people with, that feeling. I mean, for me, I feel so incredibly hopeful, because once we identify the problem and why this is so significant, then we can really see the hope for a solution. And I mean, I firmly believe that we are not put on this earth to exploit each other, and that God has a much more beautiful and glorious plan for our lives, each and every person. And that's what we have to kind of keep in mind, that this is what God planned, and we have to get back to that.
Now, you mentioned that you've been asked to come back up again in July to speak again. Is that going to be an ongoing situation where you're going to come up periodically and give a talk or get deeper into the subject?
We haven't discussed that. I would certainly be open to it. I mean, I think what we're starting to see happen now is that there are increasing numbers of father organizations, people who have a concern for fatherhood, that are kind of overlooking the significance of fathers in the prevention of human trafficking. And so I want to bring that into the dialogue for men's groups and father organizations.
I see. Okay.
So I'm really hoping that we can kind of expand our messaging because I was just recently talking to a marriage family therapist that I know, and he's dealing with a lot of men who are struggling with sexual addiction, who are dealing with pornography issues, those kind of things. And it's like, if you're doing it for yourself, you're trying to fight these things just for yourself so you can have a better life. It's hard to overcome the pull of pornography and the pull of what the constant messaging in society is, that you're entitled, that this is something that is a need, that a scratch that has to be itched, an itch that has to be scratched, and so it's this constant kind of pressure on men. But if you add in the element that your porn addiction is causing another child, another human being to suffer,
mm-hmm.
It sucks a lot of the wind out of the messaging of the commercial sexual industry. And so that's what I hope that we start to see this as a one more kind of a weapon in our arsenal to kind of get ourselves back on track as men, is by showing that there's a clear connection, that there are ways that we are buying into an industry that's built on the back of exploiting vulnerable people.
Let me ask you a question, because I know that you are doing a great job as far as communicating the message about getting fathers more involved. But I wonder, are there professional, psychologists or other people that you are working in tandem with that help you along the way as far as that's concerned?
Well, we just had our FatherCon, so on April 9th, and one of the key speakers that we had is Dr. Sam Sorillo, and this is his area of expertise, is dealing with men who are struggling with sexual areas of problem, and so sexual shame, unwanted sexual desires. So he works with men specifically, and so we had him come. He gave 2 workshop presentations, and we're building up kind of a network of resources. And this is really one of my dreams for FatherCon, is that we'll set up a hotline number. So whatever issue you're struggling with, or whatever your need is as a father, whether it's legal, the legal rights for fathers, which is also of great concern to a lot of men, whether it's in the area of therapy, mental health, whether it's in the area of getting a job and managing finances, whether it's mentorship. All of these areas, we want to build up a network of resources so that then men can just call one number. And men are not good at calling and asking for help, but this would be a way that they could call and say, look, this is a need that I have. What can I do? And then we would be able to then refer them to the organizations that already exist to assist in these different areas. So this is what I'm hoping for.
We have a question from someone who's watching about when you stood on the corner, trying to get what kind of response did you get as a result of that? Because I'm just curious to see if you had any adverse reactions or if somebody really engaged in conversation with you.
We did engage in conversations, and I'll tell you, one of the most moving experiences I had was while we were standing on the corner, a car just drove into the parking lot, screeched to a stop, and this woman got out and just stormed her way up to me, and said, I didn't know what to expect, and she just said, thank you. And she goes, 5 years ago, I was being sold on this corner, and her last customer picked her up, did his business, and then pulled out a knife and stabbed her multiple times and dumped her into the gutter right there on the street. And that was how she ended up getting away from her trafficker, was she was laid up in the hospital so long. And that just totally moved my heart. And really, this is just demonstrated the need for us to be there. And these kind of things are happening in people's neighborhoods. This is a neighborhood. Another thing that happened when I was standing on that street corner was a man came up with just tears in his eyes, and he had saved up his life to buy a house for his family. It was like this was his dream, was to be able to move into a neighborhood, raise his children, and he did everything right. He got the job, he worked hard, he bought the house, and then it turns out that section of Long Beach Boulevard is used as a track for prostitution. And his daughter, I think she was 12, and she'd be walking to school, and men would be pulling up, offering her money for sex, and she was just terrified. And this is man, he was just pleading with us, like he said, the police can't do anything. It's I don't know. This to me just broke my heart as a father. This is a guy that did everything right. To the best possible situation for his children, and then she was going through this every day, on her way to school. They even had a local elementary school that had to have teachers that were there to advise kids how to walk past the prostitutes on the street and to walk past the pimps and the customers on their way to school every day. I'm just tragic. And this is just happening in a nice, normal neighborhood.
Right. I think that's what the point is that people don't realize that.
Right.
And I'm just wondering, you brought up the woman that came into the parking lot. How are you interacting with the women who come to you and say, this is what happened to me? Are you able to interact with them or to provide them with some sort of counsel in order to help them in their survival mode?
Well, always we refer people to various organizations that are local and that provide that kind of support system. That's something where, for me, that's not really my calling, is to work directly with survivors. For me, survivors, it's a constant reinforcement of the urgency for me to do prevention work. Is every time I meet survivors, and all of my interaction with survivors really pushes me to prevent one more girl from ending up having to tell a story like that.
Right.
So it's always a referral to other organizations.
Okay.
We don't. We've had girls walk past us, but we don't try to stop them or engage them, because there's always like spotters. There's always the people working for the main trafficker who's watching the girls, and if they're wasting time with someone, then it could cause them to suffer. So we don't kind of try to interact with them. The main thing we try to do with Men Standing was really to send a message by our presence. And we've had whole families come out. We've had young children come out and join us on the streets. So it became something where children are learning also that they can do something to help, others who are suffering. Okay. But we haven't used it as it's not like a night outreach where, I know other ministries that do that, where they go out and interact with the girls. but that's not what our mission was, really, to kind of send a message that people are out there who care about them. So if you have any kind of question, and you want to change your situation, there are people who are out there who want to help you.
You recently had your FatherCon conference, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, April 9th.
Okay. How did that go? Because I know that it's been building as far as success is concerned over the years. So what was different this year?
Well, it was our third conference. We had more kind of international and national participation this time, which was really validating to our message. We had speakers come from North Carolina, Texas, across the country that came to participate, because they felt that this was something that was really necessary, that we have to be appealing to fathers. So that was really just gratifying. We had over 20 workshops, 2 workshop sessions in the morning. And my goal was really, I wanted to have something that was informative. So there was something for everyone to learn. So no matter if you've been engaged in this for a long time, whether this is totally new to you, whether you're just a father trying to, struggling, trying to get by, whatever your situation was, there was something to learn there with these different workshops, and just incredible speakers that we had.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm glad that was the case, because I know it's been built up, over the last few years, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's right. Each year's almost doubled in participation, which is good. Again, so much of it comes down to funding, how much outreach we can have. Like, we really need the resources. And this year we had, like, Anthem Blue Cross came on as a sponsor.
Wow.
And they were extremely happy with the response, with their participation. So they want to continue and do more. I mean, these things are kind of really overlap. The almost every victim of human trafficking ends up in needing medical care. So anyone who's interested in that area of healthcare, there's a clear need for people to recognize the signs, to recognize what's happening to someone, because they're not going to come right out and tell you. It's just.
So you go ahead and refer people to these various places that can provide that medical care.
Yeah, well, what we're doing is, I mean, when I was working with the Long Beach Human Trafficking Task Force, part of our responsibility then was training healthcare workers, and there's a number of people that are now, like, working on getting human trafficking incorporated into the curriculum for nurses. And we need to do training for especially urgent care nurses have to be aware of the signs of what to look for. Because what was happening, someone would come in that had damage done to their body by a client, by a predator, and they would come in to seek medical care. They're brought in by their trafficker to get medical care. And the staff would end up just handing the girl right back to the trafficker. I mean, they would come in, patch them up, and send them right back into the situation.
Did they realize what was going on aside from? Oh,
no. And if you don't know, if you don't know what to look for, and you're busy, you're doing your job, you're busy, taking care of multiple patients, and this is just one more, and she's not saying anything, and so you may have a question why she's got bruises and why she's injured in the way that she is, or the diseases she has, but it's busy, and if she's not going to cough up the information right away, then you just move on to the next patient. But if you understand the signs to look for, so what's happening now with trained urgent care nurses is they immediately contact someone who can come in, who's trained to be able to interact with the girl, separate her from the trafficker, and then knows how to talk to her, knows what questions to ask. So then she starts to reveal the reality.
On your website, do you have that kind of information available to people? Like the signs of what looks like a problem.
That's so the next things we're adding to the website. I'm glad you brought that up, and painfully so. We'll be adding more. We have one human trafficking page, and so we'll add more information about that. Basically, what I've got there is information about human trafficking in general, but we need the signs to look for. That's the next thing to add, as well as we're going to start now a resource page of organizations that we're working with that we know are good, good to refer people to.
Okay.
So that'll be added to the website now.
Because I think it's important that people know what to look for.
Yeah.
when it comes to that kind of thing, because I know that we interviewed a representative of the Freedom Calling, the local organization here, and we were told about the different signs to look for as far as whether or not there is a trafficking issue involved, and that there is a trafficker and their charge. I'm not quite sure what the right word is, but um, and so that, to me, that's important to know. What do you look for?
Yeah, right. Well, and it's different, like with your own child. So for a healthcare worker, the signs are going to be different. You're going to have someone who's very reticent to talk about, what's happening to them. They're going to seem extremely nervous and not forthright.
Right.
And so it's the same as domestic violence, where you have someone who's protecting their husband or protecting a family member. In this case, they're protecting out of fear in most cases, where they know that if they talk, there's going to be punishment on the other end when they get home. Okay. So it's seeing that someone is really uncomfortable and reticent about sharing what really happened to them, but being able to see that the damage has been done to this person.
Aside from the fact that you're coming up here in July again, some date in July, what other future plans do you have for the rest of this year for FatherCon? Anything in particular?
Yeah, we're working now on having a screening of a film. So we want to start having every couple of months, we'll have a film that we'll rent a theater, and so we'll actually show it there.
Okay.
The first one we did was Show Me the Father, which we showed at Desert Rain Church in Downey, which was a documentary that was done, that Kendrick Brothers had produced it. And it's a great documentary that really starts a conversation about the significance of fathers. And then we brought in a panel discussion afterwards about human trafficking. So the next film we're looking at, probably in July as well, is Lost Girls, Angie's Story, which is done by Julia Verdin, who's a director friend of mine. And she made this film. She's now in the process of making a second film about human trafficking. It's a tough watch, but it's really thought-provoking and really necessary discussion afterwards. So we'll have some of the people in the film come be on a panel. That'll probably be in Downey. We're looking at several theaters where we can rent the theater and then open it to the public so people can come in and watch. So it's taking opportunities to kind of introduce people to not only what's happening with human trafficking, but where fathers intersect and where fathers can be really effective in protecting not only their own children, but there's a ripple effect of your children's children and your community. And that's what we want to really see grow. And then after that, I want to do another film screening on pornography. So something specifically on pornography. And there's several good films, and Fight the New Drug has a series, Heart, Brain, World. There are 3 30-minute films that really go into issues of how we're influenced and affected by pornography, and then how that connects to the commercial sex industry. Okay. That one might be a little bit harder to get people. It's always tough. It's a tough issue to bring up with men. But what seems to be is that there's so many men who are struggling. There's so many men. It's in your face 24/7. Any moment of weakness, pornography is there. And we're not talking Playboy magazine anymore.
No.
People that are still living in the past as far as what their concept of deviant material is. It's nothing like that, and it's increasingly violent. I was just going through, the Pornhub's data, which the largest distributor of internet porn, and they proudly report on all of their findings each year. And 2021, the thing, one of the things that struck me was the number 2 sought after porn was romance, which it's like there's something that's so missing in people, that they want this fantasy that somehow love is connected with this kind of like often brutal acts of sexual behavior with another human being, and that's linked to romance. So if you're a child watching something like that, if you're a young person and you're shaping your views of what it means to love another human being, and you're getting the visual images from someone being raped in a romance setting. I mean, what does that do to how what you're
Right.
expecting in a relationship?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just so destructive. I mean, we have children learning about themselves, their physical bodies, learning about what they should be desiring from an industry that's
The
wants you to get.
sexual orientation, the fact that there's been a conflict about that, does that enter into any of these issues that come up as far as human trafficking? The fact that there's been a conflict about that, and it's being taught to youth, and so I'm wondering if that causes any issues as far as that goes.
Yeah, well, I think what happens with this pornography and with raising all of these issues, driving children to start thinking about sex,
Mm-hmm.
like is, and especially in the context of anything's okay. It's all a question of just choice, do what you want. Is that it creates, you're tapping into curiosity, and curiosity is a powerful driving force in human beings. And if you can, you're offering them a playground for dealing with whatever touches their curiosity. So what we found with even adult men is them flying off to another country or going and paying for sex with someone for the purpose of exercising what they're curious about. And the really horrifying thing of what happens with pornography is that you're being given dopamine rushes to everything that you click on that's more and more extreme.
Right.
So another one of the things I think was at number 7 now in the top searches in the world is transgender. So with all this talk about transgenderism, now you have this rising as a sexual curiosity for straight guys.
Wow.
So so then if you can go pay for someone to have an experience with, why not?
This is a many-layered issue, and I don't think people realize how many layers there are to this. It's just not, black and white as far as what causes it. There's so many different aspects of it, and that's fascinating to me. We're flashing the number and your contact. So it's Patrick at father-con.org, and you can reach Patrick at area code 310-994-1141. And so if you need that information, again, please contact us here at A Clarion Voice. Patrick, I'll give you the final word. What would you like to say to people who are watching?
Keep hopeful. I think it's when we start looking at this, you start scratching on what this looks like. It just seems overwhelming, but it really isn't. It's like once we understand the position that we're in to cause this problem, that means we're also in a position to stop it. And I think the more men that we can get engaged, if you're a woman in a relationship with a man, if you have a husband, a boyfriend, connect them to this issue, because we need all hands on deck. We need all men aboard on ending the exploitation and abuse of children and vulnerable human beings. I think this is the time we can really turn this around, because it's so in your face. We have kindergarten teachers that are teaching our children, about sex that they have like no business bringing into classrooms. We have a situation where our children are being driven to areas of life that they're going to have a very hard time recovering from. So this is the time for all parents to really take an interest in this and look at how we can get back to prioritizing the health of our children. We can do this.
Patrick, it's always a pleasure to interview you and to hear your information. Thank you so much for informing our viewers as to what this human trafficking problem is. And we hope in the future that we'll be able to continue the communication with you and continue to inform people as to how they can get involved to stop the problem. So once again, Patrick, thank you so much for being with us. And if you have any questions, you can contact Patrick at father-con.org, or you can contact him at area code 310-994-1141, or you can get in touch with us here at clarionvoice.com, and we'll be glad to give you information as well. Thank you again. We appreciate your viewing. And this is Mark Sobowitz with a Clarion Voice.